Good morning, and thank you for joining our webinar to learn more about ERA's $50 million Industrial Transformation Challenge. My name is Isabella Tarasco, Technology Investment Lead with Emissions Reduction Alberta, or ERA. Today, I am joined by Chris Owttrim, ERA's Executive Director of Technology and Innovation. Thank you for joining us. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge where we are. In the spirit of reconciliation, we have the privilege of living, working, and investing on traditional territories, which include Treaty 6, Treaty 7, and Treaty 8 nations, Métis Nations Regions 3 and 4, Inuit, and all others who live and care for these lands. We are dedicated to promoting a culture of collaboration and meaningful engagement. Acknowledgements like this are just part of the starting steps on a journey of reconciliation. Before we get into the agenda, I'd like to start by going through a few housekeeping items just to make sure we get the most out of our time today. First of all, we're expecting a lot of participants today, so everyone's microphone is muted to avoid unintentional background noise. If you encounter technical challenges related to the webinar connection, please email Neil and we will try to help you if we can. However, if we can't resolve your technical issues, or if you need to leave early, we will be posting a recording of this webinar on our website. It will be uploaded on our webpage for the Industrial Transformation Challenge, which is linked on our homepage and on our funding page. The recording will include both the presentation and the live Q&A with audio. In terms of an agenda for today, we have 1 hour together. First, I will briefly talk about ERA and our mandate. Next, we will provide an overview of the Industrial Transformation Challenge that was announced by Minister Schultz on May 10th. We'll cover some key points regarding scope and eligibility for the call, the submission process, and the timelines around funding decision. We'll also provide advice for anyone who is interested in making a submission. And finally, we will end off by answering some of your questions. So, if you have any questions as we go along that you would like us to address, please type them into the questions section of the GoToWebinar control panel. We will answer as many questions as we can, but if we don't address your questions, you are welcome to follow up with us afterwards. And so with that, let's get started. Since 2009, we've invested the proceeds from carbon pricing on large final emitters to reduce greenhouse gases and strengthen the competitiveness of new and existing industries in Alberta. Our funding is sourced from Alberta's large emitters who are required to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions to meet regulated targets under the Government of Alberta's tier regulation. We offer a clear line of sight from these funds to the investments in the technology solutions needed to help achieve emissions reductions and economic growth. We look at a range of technologies. What unifies them is that they are all great ideas that can help Alberta be successful in a net zero world. Since 2009, we've committed $935 million towards 277 projects worth a grand total of $8.8 billion. Our investments are helping detect methane emissions using satellites, transitioning Alberta's diesel-powered transit buses, trucks, and trains to hydrogen fuel, allowing drones to plant trees in dangerous and difficult-to-reach areas, and producing renewable energy and high-quality fertilizer from food waste. It's important to note we require a one-to-one investment from private sources. Public funding is not enough to accelerate these new investments. Industry needs to have skin in the game. Historically, we have significantly exceeded this requirement. Every dollar invested by ERA, we see almost $7 invested by private investors. It's important to ensure the industry and the market see that there is a market demand for the technology. I will say, before you feel the need to reach this 7-to-1 ratio, our average is more along the lines of 3-to-1. Job creation continues to remain an important metric for demonstrating economic benefit to the province and is something we look at when we are funding these projects. The modeling from our economic impact analysis suggests that our investments will generate over 35,300 person-year jobs by 2027 and contribute $5.4 billion to Alberta's GDP. Those numbers jump to over 48,000 and more than $7 billion respectively on a national level. Since the oil sands industry is the largest and fastest growing source of greenhouse gases in Alberta, it is the largest part of our portfolio. It's certainly not our only focus area. The creation and storage of low-emitting electricity is another opportunity to tap into some of Alberta's existing hydrocarbon infrastructure, innovation, and expertise. From extracting lithium from oil reservoirs to powering the world's growing fleet of vehicles to taking advantage of Alberta's existing expertise in drilling wells and applying that knowledge to geothermal sites, we invest in all of these spaces. Support for the province's bioenergy sector can also deliver some quick and important wins for both the economy and the environment. Transportation is also another opportunity. This is represented in our portfolio, such as hydrogen trains and trucks. The list goes on, from agriculture and forestry to waste management and chemical production. Having a diverse portfolio in terms of timelines and technologies and sectors is critical. Because advances and successes in one sector can benefit and create space for progress in another, it's important to note that over half of ERA projects are also funded and led by small and medium-sized enterprises, with several others participating in our projects as partners. Our guiding document, ERA's Technology Roadmap, serves as a catalyst for our technology and solution investments and is all-encompassing in terms of sectors in Alberta. Primarily, it guides our investments and lays out the pathways for Alberta to become a global hub for innovation and technology. This document gets refreshed every 18 to 24 months, and we are in the middle of producing another iteration. The TRM outlines the right mix of short, medium, and long-term technologies that will help Alberta realize its environmental and economic goals and support Canadian emissions targets. We focus on cross-cutting technology areas of investment that can be adapted and deployed across numerous operations. These include carbon sequestration, future fuels, energy efficiency, industrial transformation, and circular economy. These are the technology areas we consider have the greatest potential impact on Alberta's greenhouse gas emissions and economy, as well as the most relevant for other jurisdictions and sectors. Each technology area has unique investment and deployment needs. In the slide, we present ERA's high-level perspective of the technologies, their timeline to market adoption, the greenhouse gas reduction potential represented by the size of the technology circles, and the anticipated economic benefits. Depending on where you sit in the ecosystem, you may see the placement of these focus areas just a little bit different. It's also important to note that although the focus areas are plotted at one spot along the market adoption timelines, there are technology solutions across different timescales in each. So, our technology roadmap and our business plan guide our investments. I'll quickly share how it works from here. Projects are primarily selected through competitive funding opportunities. A few of our most recent ones are highlighted here, such as the Emerging Innovators Challenge, Industrial Transformation Challenge, and the Accelerating Hydrogen Challenge. We also have our Partnership Intake Program, which is an initiative designed to increase efficiency of our funding process. It supports promising technologies outside of our funding calls and allows us to work closely with our trusted partner network. Of course, you are all here today to learn about the Industrial Transformation Challenge. Through this funding call, ERA will continue to support the mission of Government of Alberta's TIER Fund by supporting transformative technologies across all sectors. Partnerships are central to ERA's success and critical to delivering on its commitment to driving commercialization. Working with trusted partners across the Alberta and Canadian innovation ecosystem allows ERA to leverage funds and due diligence, share risk, and reduce admin burden for applicants. We work with strategic trusted partnerships in Alberta, with federal government, and across the country where appropriate. Currently, we have 17 trusted partner agreements. A few of them include Alberta Innovates, the Natural Gas Innovation Fund, Natural Resources Canada, and Prairies Economic Development Canada, and others. Trusted partnerships allow ERA to evaluate referred projects and consider funding promising technologies outside of our traditional calls for proposals, specifically through our Partnership Intake Program. And now, it's my pleasure to hand it over to Chris Owttrim, our Executive Director of Technology and Innovation, who will dive into the details of the Industrial Transformation Challenge.
Thanks very much, Isabella. I'm really pleased that we're here today to talk about the 2024 iteration of ERA's Industrial Transformation Challenge. For those of you that have been following along the past couple of years, this challenge was originally launched in 2022, and we saw an amazing response. Because of the high demand and the high potential for outcomes in this area, we are pleased to announce that the Industrial Transformation Challenge is now an annual funding call that will take place each spring. This year's announcement was made by Rebecca Schultz, Minister of Environment and Protected Areas, and our CEO, Justin Reamer, at Calgary District Heating's Energy Centre on May 10th. And again, Calgary District Heating is one of the recipients of last year's Industrial Transformation Challenge. This investment from the Government of Alberta through the TIER Fund is focused on key solutions for achieving net zero emissions and securing the competitiveness of existing and new industries in Alberta. We know that Alberta's agriculture, forestry, heavy manufacturing, and natural resource industries account for approximately 2/3 of the province's greenhouse gas emissions. We also know that Alberta's technology need in these sectors is tremendous, given that they are the backbone of the provincial economy. So investments in solutions that can help reach net zero in these sectors can help unlock significant first mover advantages for Alberta, both again in existing and emerging economic sectors that are going to help us succeed in that low carbon future. And beyond that, it'll contribute to both the competitiveness and resilience of the province as a whole. So in terms of ERA's objectives for this funding call, first of all, this is targeting the industrial transformation focus area outlined in our technology roadmap, as if the title didn't make that obvious. And we're really looking for solutions that can help achieve the dual objective of greenhouse gas emissions reductions and economic benefits. So as our CEO likes to say, it's all about the power of and. Ultimately, we want competitive industries and a prosperous Alberta as the world transitions towards a net zero emissions economy. This, after all, is ERA's vision. But if we drill down a level, what is it specifically that this call is focused on? And this is something you're going to want to really understand as you start to develop your proposals. Well, as the name alludes to, we're looking for transformative technology that has deep step change potential for greenhouse gas emissions. What distinguishes this focus area in our technology roadmap from the energy efficiency area, for example, is that it's about doing things differently and better rather than doing the same thing incrementally a little bit more efficiently. And the idea here is that these technologies, on top of those energy efficiency improvements that we know we need, will help create that pathway to net zero emissions across all of the sectors I listed previously. And so really this call is all about looking beyond those first mile solutions and the easily captured low-hanging fruit to really seek out new processes, new chemistries to create the same product, in some cases entirely new products or new industries even, and new technologies that use new energy sources for all of our industries across the province. And that can include things like electrification, hydrogen use, incorporating biofuels, incorporating new feedstocks, and a number of other things that I'll get to in a couple of slides. Now, I should say we're not focused on just upstream production or in particular production of fuels by themselves. We are planning to target those sort of investments in an upcoming call, and we're really thinking through how we can continue to support energy production specifically throughout all of our funding programs, including the partnership program. But this call is really focused on that point of end use in the heavy emitting and high energy intensity industries across the province. So in terms of the project structure and term that we're looking for in the call, this is all spelled out in great detail in our guidelines, so I'll provide some of the high points here. Let me start out by saying that ERA across all of our funding programs funds capital P projects. That is, activities with clear objectives, milestones, timelines, deliverables, and a budget. So we're not funding generic programs or open-ended investigations. We're really looking at a specific scope that's going to take a technology from point A to point B in the advancement towards commercialization. So in terms of timelines for these projects, in this challenge, the maximum length of a project is 3 years from an initiation, plus up to 1 year of additional operational time where applicable. For clarity, what we mean is that the development, design, construction, and commissioning of a technology or installation needs to fit within that 3-year period. So again, we're not funding an open-ended 5-year research program here. But again, since we want to fund large-scale technology demonstration or deployment, and we're asking for the outcomes and learnings from that project, we do want to see up to a year of operations post-commissioning to generate that performance data. And so that's where the flexibility in the timelines comes in. In terms of project initiation, applicants that are successful and are awarded funding will be required to commence work on the proposed project within 120 days of ERA funding approval. And this is really important because when we approve a project, we do want to see that project advancing and dollars going out the door as soon as possible. So please make sure you're demonstrating your readiness to commence your project in your proposal. Now, having said that, at ERA's discretion, we can allow a request for a delayed start of up to 12 months after funding approval in cases where there's a need to align with facility operations, for example, scheduled turnarounds. And finally, last but certainly not least, we do require that the location of the project be in Alberta. And so what that means is that in some cases there can be project work, for example, engineering design or procurement, perhaps that happens outside of the province. But ultimately, we want to see the benefits of the project in terms of installed capital, installed equipment, greenhouse gas reductions, job creation, and ultimately market adoption. We want to see all those things happen in the province as a result of our investment in the project. So the most exciting slide, let's talk dollars. So ERA is making up to $50 million available for this competition with up to $10 million in funding per project. Now you'll notice an asterisk on the slide. In the program document, you'll notice that we have a statement that we anticipate funding projects at no more than $7 million in order to optimize the total funding available across the program. And so there's certainly a high opportunity cost if we fund a lot of projects at that $10 million level. And so we're only going to go to that level in exceptional cases. So my advice here is to very carefully consider how much money is really needed to make your project happen, and not to request the maximum just because more might be available. We really need all applicants to do a great job of justifying the funding request to ERA to give yourself the best chance of being selected for funding. At the other end of the spectrum, we have a minimum funding request of $500,000 in this program. And that's a little bit higher than some of our recent programs. And again, that's a deliberate choice reflecting the scale of projects and solutions that we're targeting here. As is always the case, and Isabella mentioned this already, ERA matches contributions towards eligible expenses on projects at a minimum of a 1-to-1 ratio. So again, if you're requesting a certain amount of money from ERA, we need you to bring that equivalent amount in private funding to the project. Also, we are always working in partnership with other funding organizations in Alberta and across Canada. And so there may be opportunities to leverage funding with partners. We don't have a formal stacking limit, for example. So if you, as long as you bring a private capital amount equivalent to your ERA request, you're certainly eligible and allowed to include funding from other partners in your project. In addition, in some cases, there may be an opportunity for us to share your proposal with our trusted partners to explore the possibility for additional funding or support from those organizations. So please do check that box, giving us permission to share your proposal if that's something you're interested in. So who should apply and who's eligible for ERA funding? Well, if anyone was at our event earlier in Calgary, we said that ERA is built on the philosophy that good ideas can come from anywhere. And so that's reflected in our applicant eligibility guidelines. We are open to applicants from just about any type of organization, whether you're an industrial operator, small or medium enterprise, an Indigenous community or organization, universities, not-for-profit organizations, and others. And because good ideas can come from anywhere, applicants and recipients themselves are not required to be Alberta-based. I mentioned this already. We want the project to be constructed and operated in Alberta, but the technology and the company developing it can be located anywhere. And so because of that, partnerships, while not strictly a requirement, can present a strong value proposition. And in particular, because again, this is the industrial transformation challenge, involvement from industry operators is critical, whether it's an existing industry or new players entering the market. We really need to see that the technology will be demonstrated in Alberta and that there's a clear market pull or market opportunity in the province. Furthermore, I want to encourage everyone to work with Alberta's post-secondary and research institutions and Indigenous communities where you can. This is how good projects become great projects with truly transformative potential. These partnerships can develop attract, and retain skilled workers, increasing our innovation capacity as a province and supporting local communities. And these are all incredible additional benefits on all of our investments that we do look for. The final thing I want to note on this slide is that you'll also notice a statement in the project guide that applicants may, at their discretion, submit more than one application from the same company. And we know that lots of you out there are working on more than one great idea at any one time. However, we encourage you to be selective and to put forward only your highest potential projects. We always see a significant oversubscription on these funding programs, meaning we get many more good proposals than we have sufficient funding capacity for. And we think the number of ideas out there will far exceed our ability to fund once again in this call. And so what that means is it's very unlikely that we'll be able to fund the same company for more than one project under this particular funding program. Again, the good news is we have this program as an annual opportunity going forward. And so again, we encourage you to put forward your most ready and most high potential opportunities this year, and anything that's maybe a little bit farther behind or needs some more time to develop, you can certainly consider submitting in future years. So the most common questions that we get whenever we launch a funding program are what technologies are eligible? And I think the shortest answer is that for large, broad funding calls like industrial transformation, we do not have an exhaustive or prescriptive list of eligible technologies. In fact, the most important message that I can leave you with on this slide and the next one is that the onus is on you, the applicant, to demonstrate that your project fits within the goals of this challenge. You'll obviously have to demonstrate that the technology you're proposing applies to the sectors we've highlighted and is transformative and innovative with deep greenhouse gas reduction potential. But beyond that, we are not prescribing what specific technologies might be a fit and might not. And in some cases, we fully appreciate that we don't know what's out there and what's under development, and we're open to good things coming up and surprising us. Having said that, we do extensive technology scouting and research prior to launching any one of these funding calls. And so we do have an initial idea of some areas that we think could be good solutions that would fit in this particular funding round. And so there's a very extensive list provided in the call guidelines, and I'll highlight a couple of the main bullet points here. So fuel switching and low carbon heat, including on-site production of clean heat from clean energy carriers, electric boilers, electrification of heat, and thermal energy storage, all are interesting opportunities. We also have, as mentioned previously, new processes or chemistries for various industries, including cement, fertilizer, plastics, pulp and paper, oil and gas upgrading and refining, and other heavy industries. On the upper end, the upstream side of the equation, we're certainly interested in novel approaches to extraction and production, particularly of hydrocarbons. And we're also interested, again, on the downstream side, for example, in clean feedstocks for manufacturing and chemicals. Just continuing the list here, we're very interested in this call on the agriculture and forestry side. This is an area that we had included in the last iteration of the challenge, but was a little bit underweight. And so again, a little bit of an extra shout out to those sectors this time around. We do see transformative potential in the agriculture and forestry sectors for new technologies and practices, including advanced sensors, robotics and automation, new fertilizer chemistries and application methods, novel harvesting techniques, novel land and forest management techniques, and others. We're also quite interested in solving methane emissions across all the sectors we mentioned, so both emissions from enteric sources in the agriculture and forestry sectors, as well as methane emissions in the oil and gas sector. Certainly a major demand for ongoing technology development there. One new area that we've included in the call this year that you'll see on the slide is industrial facility upgrades. And this is an interesting area where we're blurring the line a little bit between innovative technology and the sort of large-scale decarbonization projects that we know are necessary to reach net zero. And again, if you're concerned or have questions about what constitutes a major upgrade in support of net zero, our team would be happy to discuss that specific case with you. And then last but certainly not least, I've alluded to it a few times today, but looking at new industries and inherently low emissions products is certainly an eligible area for this call. And that includes things like hydrocarbons and bitumen beyond combustion, producing energy materials, so things like batteries, electrolyzers, supercapacitors, etc., and also producing the fundamental materials that are needed for the transition. And those are things like lithium, vanadium, and other precious minerals. I should also say there are a few areas that we've specifically indicated as being out of scope for this call. And in general, this scope restriction is not something that will happen forever and not for future calls. We might in fact have future calls specifically focused on these areas. So if you hear your technology listed in the next couple of bullets, don't panic. You'll certainly have opportunities to apply in the future, but we've limited them in this call simply to keep the scope focused and really razor sharp on those outcomes that we're targeting. So the ineligible areas, and these are also listed in the program guide, include detection, quantification, measurement, and monitoring of emissions, incremental efficiency or incremental fuel switching improvements. And so again, this is where you might marginally improve the efficiency of your process, or for example, switch from one fossil fuel to another, but doesn't have that long-term potential for step change improvement. And carbon capture and sequestration is also out of scope for this program. And again, this is an area that we've supported heavily in the past and expect to do more in the future, just not in this program. So if you fall into any of those points I just mentioned, again, never hurts to give us a ring, and we'll be happy to discuss where you might fit in other funding programs in the future, but we don't want you to waste your time and effort applying if you're not eligible. So please do read those points in the guidelines very carefully. So that's the technology list. I'm sure we'll get some questions about that. In terms of the stage of development we're looking for of technologies, we often get questions around technology readiness level. I like to describe it in the 3 bullets that are explained on the slide here. And the reason for that is TRL can look very different for different technologies, but ultimately the activity that you're doing in the project is a bit easier to define and a bit more standard. So what we're interested in funding in the Industrial Transformation Challenge 2024 is as follows. Field tests or pilots where an early stage technology or innovation has been prototyped and is ready to be field tested in a representative scale and operational environment. The next level up, which is commercial demonstration. So you're really close to a final commercial product and you've built representative systems and you're ready to demonstrate in what would be considered a commercial context. And then at the upper end of the technology readiness level spectrum, first of kind commercial implementation. And so what this means is deploying the technology in its final commercial form in the sort of context that it would actually be deployed in broad market adoption. And we talk about this a bit more in the call guidelines, but we really do encourage you, regardless of which of these 3 levels you're at, to really demonstrate how your technology is a novel or first of kind deployment. We don't want to see a project where you're field demonstrating a technology that's off the shelf. You do need to demonstrate that novelty and innovation. One last thing here, and again, I just alluded to it, but we really want to see a strong case for how you're going beyond those business as usual activities. And that will look a little bit different for each technology and each sector. So again, that's something that you as an applicant, when you're writing your proposal, will need to give some specific thought to. Another thing I should flag, all of these points on this slide refer to what we colloquially call steel in the ground. So we want to see actual technologies being built, being implemented, and then being operated to deliver the benefits. So what we are not funding in this call are standalone studies of any type relating to technology development. So for example, feasibility studies, front-end engineering, detailed engineering, systems analyses, things of that, inventories, all things of that nature are not eligible. And so if your project scope is only those elements, you will not be selected for funding. However, for example, if you're doing a first of kind commercial implementation, we know that there's going to be some upfront design work and engineering that goes into that, and that can certainly be included as a component of a broader scope. So again, as long as your ultimate objective is one of the 3 points here, you should be on site. Now, when it comes to our submission and evaluation process, so first I'll go through the steps in the process, which those of you that have applied in the past will be quite familiar with. And then on the next slide, I'll go through the specific timelines. So as you can see in the slide here, we have a 2-stage evaluation process followed by project execution. So we start with the expression of interest or EOI stage, and that's where we're at right now. And in this stage, applicants are invited to provide an overview of their proposed project. So a relatively short document, 10 pages maximum, and this needs to be submitted on our online system. And I'll go over those timelines again in a moment. Once the expressions of interest have been submitted, they are evaluated by a team of independent experts. And we typically bring together a team of evaluators with subject matter expertise in business, finance, science, engineering, GHG quantification, and other relevant areas for the technologies being considered. After the evaluation process, a short list of finalists will be invited to submit a full project proposal, or FPP. And so this is a significantly more detailed stage of evaluation, including more detail about the proposed project, as well as the expected outcomes and the plan to implement the project if selected for funding. At that full proposal stage, ERA assigns an expert proposal advisor to each of the applicants to ensure that the quality and consistency is there, and to provide you with that hands-on assistance that can be really essential at that stage of the proposal. After the full proposals are submitted, they are again evaluated by an independent team of experts, and all full proposal applicants will be invited to offer a presentation to the evaluation team. So this process culminates with an in-depth review meeting where all projects are discussed in detail, and ultimately a recommendation is generated to bring to ERA's board of directors for final approval. And I should note that all final funding decisions are made by ERA's board of directors. After that decision is made, and again, now we're in stage 3, we enter into legal agreements with successful applicants that details the terms and obligations of each party as it relates to our contribution and completion and reporting on the project. And we will share the terms and conditions of that agreement with applicants at the full project proposal stage if you're shortlisted. ERA's funding is then distributed on a milestone by milestone basis upon completion of certain project objectives and incurring of real costs. And the progress of each project is monitored and reported on throughout the scope. And of course, at the end of the project, all recipients are required to produce a final outcomes report, which will be shared publicly for the broader benefit of Alberta. And if you're curious about the level of detail we ask for in those reports, many reports from our previously completed projects are available on our website. The final and really important part that I want to note on this slide is that our entire funding process is overseen by an independent fairness monitor who reports directly to our board of directors to ensure that all applicants are treated equitably and fairly. So that's the process, and now we'll map that to specific timelines. So the most important timeline, and it's coming up very quickly, is the deadline for your expression of interest submission. So as shown on the slide, the deadline for EOI submission in this call is Friday, June 21st, 2024 at 5 p.m. Mountain Time. I should stress that ERA does not and will not extend the deadline for any reason or for any applicant. And so you must submit your proposal on time and in good order by 5 p.m. on June 21st. Once you've done that, we'll go through our review process and we will notify applicants who have been shortlisted by mid-August. At that point, you'll have until October to produce your full project proposal. And again, the submission deadline for that will be provided to you when you're invited. We'll have our presentation to the review team, again, just for shortlisted applicants in November. And we expect to make our funding decision in December, meaning we'll notify you, it says there December, so we'll notify you by late December or early in the new year. The last thing I'm excited to note here is that we've committed to repeating this program on an annual basis. And again, what that means is that if you look at these timelines, you can reasonably expect we'll be repeating them with a new tranche of funding and a new set of projects this time next year. So if you can't quite make this year's deadline, or if you have some other ideas in the early stages of development, you'll have another chance next year with the benefit of all that time to prepare. Of course, if you are ready and able to submit this year, we encourage you to do so because feedback that we provide to all applicants can be very valuable for repeat applicants. Further to my point about sharing knowledge and sharing final reports from projects, we do have requirements for reporting on project outcomes, achievements, and lessons learned. And we're undertaking some really exciting initiatives to help broaden the reach of outcomes from our projects. This includes reporting on greenhouse gas reductions, both actual and projected, job creation, and other environmental, economic, and social benefits. We're also committed to encouraging widespread knowledge dissemination from funded projects to maximize the benefit of our participation. This is a really important component of our funding, to share knowledge and encourage broader and more informed decision-making on future investments. And so in addition to the written reports, ERA may require applicants to commit to specific activities, such as knowledge sharing workshops or participation in ERA lessons learned activities. And you'll find that whenever ERA is at a conference, we're always happy to bring along a few recipients to help tell their story. On this screen, you'll see a few photos and some what those events look like, including panels that we've done at one of our recent lessons learned events. And we also participate in a variety of external events throughout the year, both in person and virtual, on panel discussions and keynote speakers. We also host several events annually, including lessons learned workshops, maximizing funding potential events, and our Carbon Copy podcast, which Isabella and I have both hosted a few episodes on this year, and I encourage you to give a listen if you're interested in learning what ERA is up to. The recent episodes have touched on everything from CCUS technologies, geothermal potential, measuring methane emissions from space, managing those methane emissions from cattle, unlocking hydrogen potential, and more. We also have a great video series that brings the stories of our funded projects to life with some amazing visuals and great voiceover, not from me. We also have monthly productions that focus on projects and partners to share the great work happening in the province. And we have an annual report that I do encourage everyone to give a quick read. Each of these and the media coverage that accompanies them is a great opportunity both to get the word out about your project and your technology, and also to share the outcomes from what ERA has invested in. The other thing that I'm really excited to talk about, and I already mentioned carbon capture is not the focus of this call, but it is a major focus area for ERA and will continue to be in the future. And a great example of that is the fact that ERA is very excited to be co-hosting the biannual GHGT conference, the 17th iteration of which will be happening in Calgary this fall. So October 20th to 24th, 2024. So we're very happy to be co-hosting this event between ourselves and IEA GHG, and it's going to be the premier gathering of greenhouse gas technology, and in particular, carbon capture utilization and storage experts and researchers and companies globally. So we do encourage anyone working in that space or with interest in the technology to take a look at the GHGT 17 website, and please consider registering and attending. It's going to be a fabulous event, and ERA is very happy to be hosting a number of tours to former funding recipients. Again, a great opportunity to learn about previous ERA investments and the state of carbon capture in Alberta. So, as promised by Isabella, we have a couple of suggestions and tips for preparing a successful submission. This is the last thing we'll chat about before we take your questions, so please start getting those ready and start putting those in the chat if you feel up to it. So as I mentioned before, we often receive more than 10 times more funding requested than we can actually provide. And so it's really important for you as an applicant to make a strong case for why we should fund your project. First of all, I would recommend that you start the process now if you haven't already. From now until the submission deadline, we have just over 4.5 weeks. We know it doesn't take that long to write a 10-page application. However, it does take time to forge partnerships, get internal approvals, allocate resources, and really put the required level of thought into how you're going to make your case for why we should fund your project. And while you don't need to have every internal approval or every partnership finalized, every dollar confirmed by the time of that EOI submission, the farther along you are in those processes, the better off you'll be in terms of demonstrating that your project is real and ready to advance. Since all submissions need to be completed through our online portal, the ERIMS, please go there to register an account if you haven't done so already. Again, the worst thing you can do is wait until the last day to click that link and find out you have to fill out forms to create your account and upload your proposal. So I encourage you to go and do that as soon as you can. If you already have an ERIMS account from a previous submission, this is a good time to go back and make sure that you can still log in and your credentials still work. Next, and I really can't emphasize this enough, it's really important that you read through the call for expressions of interest guidelines document, the template, and our eligible expense and cost instructions. These are not particularly long documents, but they do answer almost all the questions that we get on a regular basis. And they do help outline what ERA is looking for and not looking for in one of these submissions. So for example, if you have a project that's not eligible or doesn't fit with this call, or that won't be able to meet the timelines for the rest of the process, you can save yourself a lot of time and effort by reading that guidelines document and figuring that out early. Building on that point, it's really important to evaluate to read in particular our evaluation criteria, which are provided in the call for expressions of interest document. These are the criteria that we're going to use to evaluate your proposal and ultimately make our decision on who to shortlist. And each of these criteria have different weightings. So what you're going to want to do when you're reading through the template and the guidelines is to understand that all the criteria are important, all of them need to be addressed, but you do need to put more effort towards those with a higher weighting. And that's all outlined in the guidelines. Building on that point, when you're completing the expression of interest document, it's really important to use clear language and to address the points laid out in the template. Our evaluation team consists of subject matter experts who are really, really strong experts in reading these sort of proposals and in the fields of interest for this call. But if they can't understand the information that you've provided, or if you've provided significant extraneous information that eats up all the space in those 10 pages and doesn't answer the questions that we've asked, those reviewers are not going to have the confidence or the certainty needed to move your application forward. Speaking of the 10-page limit, I think it's worth noting that you are welcome and encouraged to include optional letters of support, whether from funding partners, industrial partners, site hosts, technology vendors, or others that might be able to provide support to your project. These do not count as part of the 10-page limit and can really be highly beneficial in demonstrating to reviewers that you've done your homework and that your project is ready to move forward. And last, but certainly not least, in case I haven't impressed this enough, please do not wait until the last day to submit your application. I can tell you that we have lost good opportunities in the past because of deadlines that were missed, or computer errors that happen, and this is simply a matter of fairness to all applicants and something that we are quite firm on. If you do have technical issues during the submission process, our team is happy to help resolve technical issues and is very responsive to requests that come in. But I can tell you that if you wait to the last day, it's entirely possible we cannot address all the last minute issues that may arise. And if we get a flurry with 1 minute left, we're not going to be able to help all those people submit. I mentioned this already, but in some cases, there may be an opportunity for ERA to share your proposals with trusted partners and explore the possibility of additional funding or support. So during the process, you'll have an opportunity to grant us permission to confidentially share your submission with those trusted partners. And I really encourage you to do so. We'll only share your application with your permission and with partners that we have a non-disclosure agreement in place with, and for the sole purposes of exploring further funding leverage. And on that point, ERA has a very comprehensive confidentiality and privacy policy that covers all submissions. And so I do encourage you to put the information in the proposal that'll help ERA make a positive decision on your project. Don't hold back. A couple more comments here on the content of your application. First, please remember that our funding comes from Alberta's carbon pricing system, the TIER regulation, and as such, our mandate revolves around greenhouse gas benefits. It might be obvious to you how your technology results in greenhouse gas benefits, but maybe not obvious to everyone. And we know that this space is extremely complicated, particularly when it comes to heavy industry. So please make sure that's crystal clear in the proposal. Additionally, we do need you to flag for us very obviously where you're planning to carry out your project, and in particular, if a site in Alberta has been finalized, or if not, when it will be. We've had a lot of projects drop off because they thought they had a site lined up, or they told us they did, and then ultimately they were unable to confirm. So that is something we'll be looking at very closely for all these projects. You also need to make a clear case for why your project benefits will accrue to more than just you as the applicant and your partners. How ERA dollars will help the broader industry and innovation community. This can include things like knowledge sharing, technology transfer, market adoption, capacity building, and other benefits that might accrue beyond just your project. And finally, please remember that ERA is in regular communication with other funding organizations. In other words, we do all talk to each other, so make sure you're telling us the same story and not trying to apply for the same funding from multiple funding organizations where you're not eligible to do so. It can certainly raise questions and red flags if you act like ERA is the only organization you're applying to, when we know that that's not the case. And with that, if you've made it this far and if you're still on the line, thank you for staying with us. We do have a bit of time for you to ask questions of myself and Isabella. So what you'll see on your webinar screen is a questions pane where you can type in questions, and that is how we will moderate and respond to questions as they come in. So we'll give a few minutes for those to trickle in. I think Isabella already has a couple lined up, and then we'll proceed directly to the Q&A. Thanks, everybody.
Great, thanks, Chris. So thanks so much for those of you who put your questions in. The first question is circled around technology readiness levels. So Chris, perhaps you can help clarify which TRL or technology readiness levels ERA looks at.
Thanks very much, Isabella. And again, I'll say ERA is more interested than in the activities that you're going to carry out in the project than the specific TRL that you identify as. However, as a useful shorthand for identifying if you're a fit for our programs, what we typically say is that we're looking for the project activities to be somewhere between TRL 6 and TRL 9. So again, if you're starting maybe at an earlier stage, so TRL 4 or 5, where you're at the prototyping stage, but during the ERA funded scope, you'll move up into that field pilot stage, so TRL 6, you would be eligible. Likewise, if you're already at a higher TRL but are expecting to advance all the way to TRL 9 plus, so again, first of kind commercial demonstration or implementation, again, that would certainly be a fit. What you want to be careful with TRL is if you're at a very early TRL, so preliminary research, initial concept of your technology, but you claim in your project, oh yes, we're a fit for ERA because we're going to reach TRL 7 and a field demonstration by the end of the project. That's a very large jump in TRL. And so you're going to have to make a very strong case to our review team that you're ready and able to achieve that jump. So that's a good way to think about TRLs.
Thanks, Chris. Second question, can you explain the rationale for technology exclusions or technologies that are out of scope for this call?
Yeah, this is a really great question. It's one we get every time we put out a call because, quite frankly, every time we launch a funding program, we always have some exclusions. There's a few reasons for that. First of all, as I mentioned, we are typically oversubscribed by at least 10 to 1. So we receive 9 proposals for every 1 proposal that we're ultimately able to fund. And so if we simply opened up every single funding call to every single technology, that number might be 20 or 30 to 1, and we'd be having to say no to a lot more people. We find that trying to strike a balance of having a broad call where lots of solutions can apply, but still with a few guardrails on it, like we've done, is the best way to ensure that we have a reasonable number of applicants, but also a reasonable success rate for those that put in the effort for submitting. The other piece I'll comment on is portfolio balance. And this is where I really encourage you to read ERA's technology roadmap and our business plan. These documents help outline where we see the opportunities for funding and how we're going to convert that into specific calls for proposals. And so what you'll see is that we tend to move around through those 2 to 3 programs per year through the different areas of our technology roadmap, and thereby covering a really broad swath of technologies in a given year, even if we don't do so in a specific call. And so again, if you're on that list of excluded technologies, don't take it personally and don't get discouraged. We will have other funding opportunities that cover some of the things on that list in the near future.
All right, we've had a few questions come in around the presentation, whether it will be uploaded to the website. And I can say that both the presentation and the webinar will be uploaded to our ERA website, just on the Industrial Transformation Challenge funding page. And there you will also find a submission template. So we've had a couple questions around template for submission as well. The next question circles around, can projects collect or generate offset credits?
Another great question, another common one. So yes, projects that receive ERA funding can be eligible to generate offset credits. We do not impose any restrictions on that. And so as long as you're on side with the other regulations and policies around that, you should be okay. Again, that's not an area that we specifically deal with, so we won't necessarily help you quantify or apply for those credits. But in general, our funding does not make you ineligible to receive credit.
Okay. Can a company apply to the challenge if it is a solution provider startup with an innovation? And perhaps I can start by saying you do need an actual project. So if you have a great innovation that you're working on, it would just be good to find some partners and then make sure that you have that actual project defined and a scope, timelines, etc. But I'll pass it on to Chris if he's got any other thoughts.
I mean, Isabella really covered it. I'd say the other thing is we're obviously happy to invest in any type of company, but with that said, we don't invest in the company itself. We invest in the project and the scope that you're carrying out. So you'll find we really don't have any eligibility limitations around who you are or what structure or stage of advancement your company is. Unlike some of our previous calls that were maybe limited to small, medium enterprises, for those that are familiar. So in this call, there's no such restrictions, but again, we invest in the project. And so you do need to show us that your project aligns, not just that your company is a fit. So it's both.
Okay, there was also a question around page 19 of the guidelines that mentioned the lead applicant needed to be a small and medium-sized enterprise. This is unfortunately incorrect, and so the guidelines will be corrected. We are open to all types of lead applicants for this call for proposals. Another question, We mentioned that work should start 120 days after approval of the project. Can we clarify the difference between this timeline and the contract execution timeline?
Yes, great question, albeit a little bit in the weeds. So what we mean when we say commencement of the project is actually when you, the recipient, would start undertaking project activities and incurring costs for reimbursement in the project. We contrast this with the contracting deadline, which is a little bit shorter, and that's the amount of time it takes us to finalize our due diligence and work with you to develop the final scope and legal terms for the agreement prior to commencement. And so there is a bit of a difference there where we want to get those contracts finalized and get you fully onboarded as soon as possible. But then there is a bit of a flexibility period where you can start your project either a little bit after contracting, or indeed at your own risk, you can start it a bit earlier as of the FPP deadline. But again, any costs incurred would be at your own risk and subject to us eventually signing an agreement with you. So there is quite a bit of flexibility there. It is spelled out in the guidelines. And again, if that's something that's really giving you trouble when you're writing up your proposal and your plan, feel free to get in touch with our team and we'd be happy to walk you through it.
We've had a couple questions about previous submissions. So if a team submitted a proposal earlier, which was not selected by ERA, can they resubmit? And would it be feasible to schedule a meeting to get feedback on earlier submission? And so I can start by saying, yes, you can absolutely resubmit if your technology or project is within the scope outlined in this call. And if you had applied to a previous challenge and were unsuccessful, ERA always provides the opportunity for debrief calls with our applicants. So just reach out to our applications team if you were unsuccessful. You can reach us at applications@eralberta.ca, and that email is also found on our webpage. So please go there for any support that you need in that.
And just one thing to add on that, as Isabella said, you're certainly welcome to reapply. In fact, in many of our calls, a healthy portion of the successful applicants are folks that were previously rejected, have taken that feedback and have come back and now been successful. So we're always happy to see that happen. However, we do slightly change and tweak the template and the guidelines from call to call. So please don't just resubmit the same EOI or you're very likely to get the same result. And so do take that time to revise and again, adjust the narrative of your proposal to fit the current funding opportunity.
In the guidelines, there's mention that successful applicants may request a delayed start date of up to 12 months after funding approval. When would ERA consider this an acceptable option?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And this stems from feedback we've had from our applicant community about making sure our process timelines are flexible and accommodating and not raising unnecessary barriers to people being able to access the funding. And so in particular, when we're looking at funding technologies and projects at large industrial facilities, we know those facilities have turnaround and maintenance schedules that are planned, in some cases, years in advance. And so lining up when a project might start and be able to be dropped into one of those facilities can be really challenging without that extra flexibility. So that's a really good example. If you say, look, we are very excited to start this project. Maybe there's some engineering work we can do up front, but we can't actually install the widget until 3 years from now because that's when the turnaround is going to be. That's when you would make that case for, okay, here's why we want to start at this time 120 days later so that eventually the install timelines line up with our turnaround. There's many other scenarios where that flexibility can be offered and include things like long lead supply chain issues, issues securing partners and financing, and a number of other things. So we don't want to encourage everyone to make use of that option, but we do offer that flexibility to ensure that we don't miss out on good projects for what is functionally an administrative constraint. So again, happy for you to consult our team on that, and we can give you advice that's specific to your situation. Again, that's typically something we would handle more in depth at the full project proposal stage. So if you're worrying too much about your schedule of your project right now at the EOI, I'd say don't put forward what the situation is. And if we deem your project to be worthy of shortlisting to the next stage, that's something we can absolutely work through with your advisor that we assign you.
Next question, how do we contact an ERA team member to determine whether projects are in scope? And so you can email the applications team again at applications@eralberta.ca. We can set up a quick little meeting with you. You can run through your technology, provide us with some details, and then we can determine whether you should apply or whether there are other opportunities out there for your technology. Next question, if the project is already in progress, would the total project budget include past spending, or is this just future spending aligned with the ERA fund start date?
Yeah, you're thinking about it in the right way. So all of our funding and the eligible costs that our funding can go towards, only that eligibility date kicks in as of the full project proposal deadline, which again will be in late October 2024. So any work or any costs that are incurred prior to that, you can certainly have started your project already and have incurred costs, that's no problem. We'll simply record those as ineligible when we go to do our final budget and the estimating the amount that we can actually match. So again, something we're happy to work with you on as you move through the process. But again, it's really, when we say ineligible expenses, it means ineligible for matching on the basis of the timeline that they were incurred, not that it makes your project ineligible. So that's an important distinction. But again, please do take that into account when making your funding request, because if you request match funding for work that's already been done or that will be done prior to October 2024, unfortunately, we won't be able to match that portion of the project.
Do we provide funding for any specific technology in this call?
As mentioned, that's one of our most common questions. And again, I'd say we are not specifically targeting any given technology in this call. We've outlined that list of things we think might be a good fit based on our scouting and based on our awareness of what's out there. But again, we really want you to make that case that this is going to enable a step change emissions reduction benefit in one of those major sectors that we had listed. So if you can make that case, and again, as Isabella said, our team's always happy to have that conversation about how you can provide that narrative and how you fit. But if you can make that case, you're a fit. The other piece is obviously we're looking for new and novel technologies. So if it's something that's off the shelf or that's been done in Alberta before, then you're not very likely to be successful. So just keep that in mind as well.
And I should also mention that we do take a portfolio approach, meaning that we look at applications in the sectors and look for different applications. We also look at what we've previously funded to ensure that new projects are complementary and additive and bring forward new processes or project outcomes. And we'll have one more question. In terms of feasibility and FEED studies, how does ERA look at this and how can this be incorporated in a project?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So I'll say our standard, and this has been pretty typical throughout our history, is that we've funded those components of projects when they feed into ultimately to the bigger project, into something that we would typically fund, so the actual capital deployment. So a great example is if you're planning to deploy a new technology at an industrial facility in, let's say, year 3, maybe year 1 of that project is actually doing the front-end engineering, the detailed design, the procurement, sort of the paperwork and the studies and the work that's needed before you actually start pouring concrete and putting steel in the ground. So if you apply to us with that entire scope, so starting with your design and going all the way to when you turn the key and the thing starts operating, plus a bit of time for operational and data collection, that's a very typical ERA project. There have been a few exceptions in the past where we funded that upfront work, so just the study by itself, but that is not the case for this call. So again, if you apply for just the engineering work or just a feasibility study, and then you say, okay, by the end of year 3, we'll be done our study and then we'll go and build it later, unfortunately, that sort of scope is not eligible. So again, if you're still trying to understand and decide if your project's a fit, that's a great thing to reach out to our team about for us to help with.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the webinar. Thank you so much for your interest and your participation today. If you have unanswered questions after our webinar and after reviewing our support materials, please email us using applications@eralberta.ca email address. Finally, we hope to have the webinar and slides posted on our website shortly. Thanks once again. Have a wonderful day.